Great big hello and welcome everybody to Webinar Wednesday. Steve Dotto here. How the heck are you doing this fine day? We had a slight hiccup as I first pressed play, but I think we're all back. And let's check in. I think we have. How are you doing? Can you hear me?
I can. Sorry. The timing came on with my stream on the other. Hey, everybody. How are you?
It's good. So, how are you getting ready for Christmas? Now, you're like the big decorator person, aren't you?
I am. I am like the Hallmark fan of yes. Actually, every room in my house is decorated. Our bedspreads are changed. My bathrooms.
So how come I've got my Christmas lights up already, and you
I
don't
don't
have
in my office
anything? Look, I even got little twinkle lights over here.
You're right. You know, I just haven't gotten there. So we're a little bit behind, to be honest with you. I'm usually decorated like the Friday after Thanksgiving, but this year we were supposed to go to Barbados for Christmas. So the plan was that I was not decorating as much. So I got rid of some of my old Christmas stuff last year. So I've kind of been like having to buy stuff. And Kevin is not happy with the Amazon arrivals that have happened in the past few days.
We're a little consumerish, are we?
We are.
Well, let's, folks, today we've got, this is a very cool webinar today, I think, because we're going to be talking about the live streaming versus classic webinars. So many of you who have been with us for a long time here on Webinar Wednesday remembers the old days, back in the way back in the old days, we used to deliver Webinar Wednesday using Webinar Jam. And we did that for maybe 2 years. And then we spent a couple of years using a product called Demio, which is another great webinar package, classic, good webinar packages, both of them doing a great job. When we came back from our summer break this year, we started to deliver Webinar Wednesday the way that we see it now, which is live streamed. And there's been a lot of lessons along the way, but I believe there's a convergence between live streaming and webinar technology, not in all cases, but in a lot of cases. So today we're going to kind of take a dive into into what we've learned from a marketing perspective, from a presentation perspective of the difference between webinar packages and live streaming. And hopefully it'll open your eyes to make better decisions in what you might be interested in using as you build out your own platforms. And I also, just as a pure curiosity, I find it fascinating. You know, I come from that television background where I still think what we do every day, every time I sit down and press publish here, and we broadcast to hundreds or thousands of people in real time, whereas we used to have the television studio and the broadcast license and a crew of 7 to 15 people and all of those things in order, especially to deliver live television. Oh my God, it was such a challenge. Now we do it all just with off-the-shelf hardware. Yeah, and software like our sponsors. I should mention that we are being brought to you today by the folks at Restream.io. The actual tool that we're using to broadcast and publish today is Restream. Now, Restream is a very unique product. It allows us to. It's got a studio package which allows us to manage the entire presentation as you're seeing right now, bring in all of the different assets, the different video pieces, the different video feeds, and stream it to multiple networks at the same time, which is the reason that we are right now being seen live on Facebook Live at the same time as we are on YouTube Live. And if we wanted to be on Twitch, if I was a Twitch sort of person, we could be on Twitch and we could be on other platforms as well, all at the same time. So if you want to learn more about Restream, April is dropping the link in all of the chats right now. Drop by and check out Restream. If you're interested in getting into the world of live streaming, you couldn't ask for a better partner than Restream, and we certainly appreciate them here at Dottotech. Speaking of things and people who we appreciate here at Dottotech, the Dottotech channel itself is brought to you through the generosity of our patrons, our supporters at Patreon. We are a community-funded channel, and they're supported with our patrons. And there are legions of you out there, and we appreciate each and every one of you. Now, if you are just new to us and you don't know what's involved with the Patreon sponsorship of Dottotech, the relationship is thus. We, every week, deliver a free tutorial webinar, such as this one here, Webinar Wednesday, and our patrons support us financially to the tune of $10 a month. And for that $10, they get access to, of course, all of these videos that we produce, which are made free to everybody. But after this video has been up for a week, which you can view at any time over that week, we then archive it into the Webinar Wednesday archives, which are the exclusive domain of our patrons. And this is Webinar Wednesday number 153. So there's 152 other tutorial webinars that are all available to them, as well as some other perks, including discounts on our products. And I used to have a great perk, which was when we used to travel. Do you remember traveling, April? Used to get on a plane, go to a conference, and people would be at the conference.
Yes.
And you could see who was there because we didn't have to wear masks. And I said one of the things is free hugs if you wanted. I'm sad that we can't give the hugs right now. I'm hoping that maybe by the end of next year we can start hugging people again. That would be really nice. That would be
that's very optimistic and hopeful.
Yes. Hopeful. All right. So here's the deal. It's a little bit of a longer video today, so I think I've done enough of a preamble. We're going to dive in. Typically speaking, on Webinar Wednesday, the format that we follow is I pre-record the demos so that we can increase the information density and include demos and that sort of stuff, and just respect your time a little bit more efficiently. So I recorded the demo yesterday that I'm going to give to you right now. It's about 30 minutes long, so it's longer than normal. While it's going on, both April and I will be in chat answering as many questions as we can. And then once we're through with the chat, once we're done with the video, we'll come back. We'll answer the rest of the questions that you have right through to the top of the hour, where we kind of cut things off and we try and keep it to 1 hour. If you have to run away for any reason, if the internet cacks out on you, or if the FedEx guy comes with a whole bunch of Christmas decorations that you just have to put up right now, then the replay will be available almost immediately afterwards on your favorite channel on either Facebook or YouTube Live. Plus, those of you who have registered for it, we will send you out a email with a replay notice, and any links that we talk about that come up within this broadcast, we will also incorporate, so you don't have to write it down right now. Does that sound like a plan? Are we all in good shape?
Sounds like a great plan.
All right, let's get to the video. See you on the other side. The convergence of traditional webinar formats with the new fangled live streaming platforms as we look forward to 2021. Really, this week's Webinar Wednesday is a bit meta, because this webinar that we're delivering right now is really the platform that I've kind of formed my opinion on how the convergence between traditional webinars and live streaming is happening. So what we're going to do today is we're going to look at if there is still a need for traditional webinar platforms, where that is, and what has migrated over to the live streaming world, and what we have to fill in, like where we have to backfill within the live streaming world to allow for them to be to take over more of the webinar space. And the movement is in that direction. We are increasingly moving from the world of delivering dedicated webinars to delivering live streams that add more communication, more functionality, more of the webinar features. So that's what we're going to be looking at as we kind of walk through it today. So I think the first thing that we need to do is we need to really define where each one's space is and how I view them differently. And the first is with live streaming, the platform owns your audience. If you stop and think about it, if we're streaming at least to the major platforms, to YouTube, to Instagram, to Facebook, the platform owns your audience when you're delivering a live stream. And this is crucial to understand. When you deliver a webinar, you're using a dedicated webinar package. You're capturing your visitors, your audience's email address, and you are managing the communication, and you own that relationship. But when you live stream to Facebook Live as we are now, or to YouTube Live as we are right now, Facebook and YouTube owns the relationship between you and this particular live stream. I don't know your names unless you share it with me. I don't know your email address unless you choose to register with me through some other form. But Facebook and YouTube won't tell me who you are. They will identify you if you comment. They will give me a gross number of how many of you are here. But I have no way of reaching out to you and continuing our relationship beyond the end of this live stream unless something else happens that creates that relationship. So this is I think probably the biggest consideration that we have to have, is that when we are delivering live streams, we don't own our audience. The platform owns our audience. And should they choose to disenfranchise us from that audience, cut off access for any reason whatsoever, we have no recourse. You're lost to us. So that is the gamble. That's the reality of the situation. Another aspect to consider is the nature of live streaming versus webinars. And this has always been a big deal to me. Live streaming is typically feed-based. where if we're, for instance, in Facebook right now, we might have appeared to you in your Facebook feed. In YouTube, if you've subscribed to our channel, then you're getting access, then you're being notified. Of course, with this webinar, we've done some things. Many of you have registered for it, which I will be talking about, which follows much more traditional webinar platform. But for the most part, it's feed-based. When you start to live stream, people are notified that have subscribed to you or follow you. Steve Dotto is going live. And if you happen to be interested in the content that I'm delivering at that moment, you can jump onto the live stream. So there's very little commitment on your part. It's basically interrupting whatever you're doing on your day for the most part, and then you can decide whether you're going to join in. Set against that, webinars, although it's much more difficult to get somebody to register for a webinar because they have to give your email address, and there's that whole exchange of personal information that goes back and forth. But if you're going to sign up for a webinar, you have intent. You are going to put it on your calendar and you're going to enter it with the intention of watching it because you've determined that there is value there. And most of you here on Webinar Wednesday follow that, are kind of in that camp. You've registered for this webinar. We've sent you an email to remind you of it. It's appeared in your feed, and now you're here and you've come with intent. And consequently, our live streams, the live stream of the style that we do, has a much higher retention rate than a traditional live stream, which has people have very little commitment to unless they happen to be engaged in. So the live streaming platforms have certain advantages and disadvantages, as does the webinar platform have certain advantages and disadvantages. But overall, I believe that the world is moving towards live streaming. It just has too many advantages that we can't replicate easily in the webinar world. So our job, if we are looking at the future of this sort of a broadcast, is to figure out what's missing in the world of live streaming, how we can backfill those needs, and where it's important that we say, no, live streaming is not going to be the case. We are going to deliver this particular piece of content as a webinar because it checks off more of the boxes. So that's what we're going to look at. So let's start by talking about the strengths of webinars and the weaknesses of webinars, and then the strengths and weaknesses of live streaming overall. And then I'll jump in and we will look at a couple of the different platforms as we go along as well. But first of all, the biggest strengths that webinars have, other than the ones that we just talked about, those overarching differences, is the fact that when somebody does sign up for a webinar, they are your contact. They register, they enroll with you. You can capture their email information into your CRM, and you can track whether or not they attend the webinar or not, because you can identify who the person is. That's a huge benefit. And for online marketers, that's probably the major reason that we use webinars. We also have the ability within webinars to be able to record the webinar and to be able to convert the webinar quite easily into an evergreen playback. And each step that we do, if we do create an evergreen version of a webinar, we say use it as a training, we still have those initial benefits of having a full-on registration system and a tracking system to know who registers and how long they watch the webinar, etc. And it's not just gross numbers that, 52% of the webinar was viewed, but we know that Tim viewed the webinar 52%, which is just incredibly valuable data for us. That is the analytics side. That's another one of the benefits, is the fact that we have really detailed analytics that are not just overall performance, but specific to how it performs with each individual that participates. Typically speaking, webinar packages have terrific integration with your CRM or with your customer relationship management package. For example, if I was setting up a brand new webinar right now within Demio, which is a webinar package that I often use, when we go to create a new event, I'm just going to create a brand new event for you right on the fly here, and we'll call this the demo. And we will continue. Oh, demo event. There we go. Needs 5 characters. So that's going to be the name of this webinar. When I create that webinar, one of the biggest strengths of a tool like Demio or Webinar Jam or Easy Webinar or any of them is this field right here, which is integration. You can see that I have it integrated with Infusionsoft. If I turn on the Infusionsoft integration for this particular webinar, I can have it turned on or off depending on which webinar I have. What you see here, this is actually the internal classification system that my Infusionsoft account has, where I tag different individuals based on, and for example, if for webinars, here we have all of the different Webinar Wednesdays. You can see how many different Webinar Wednesdays we have, all the way up to 150 something or other, which is the one that we have right now. There it is, 150. There it is, live streaming and webinars, if I wanted to tag it for this particular webinar. So you see, we have all of these tags, so I can identify individually everybody who attends the webinar, and we have the ability then to communicate with you later on. So that built-in integration with the CRM, I've bolded it there in the checklist because it is one of the most powerful features for online marketers. Built into that, actually a part and parcel of that, is the fact that it actually has an email autoresponder built in as well. So we can, if I go back in here, we can choose to, if I go back in here, we can go and we can manage email notifications that anybody who's registering for this webinar has through a series of different emails that we can customize. We can send it immediately to confirm that they've registered for the webinar 24 hours before, an hour before. So you will have in the past with us received these emails into your inbox, letting you know when the webinar is happening, reminding you of it, and sending you the login link to make sure that you attend. Because at the end of the day, we spent a lot of energy trying to get you to register for a webinar. So these email notifications that either happen before or post webinar are crucial to us to really kind of honor the effort that we've put into getting you to engage with us. So all of those are terrific benefits that are built into webinars. We also have the ability to incorporate much more robust chat, typically speaking. And the chat, the chat that we have right now that you have access to if you're in Facebook Live or you're in YouTube Live is fine, but it's only fine. For example, within the live streaming package that we're using right now, it's difficult for us to manage the chat, to identify individuals, and there's no way for us to parse out questions automatically. Be able to identify, just click a link that will say, this is a question that you want to answer later on as you're kind of going through the chat as the webinar is going on. So management of the conversation, the sidebar conversation that's happening with your attendees is much more difficult in live streaming, whereas chat, depending on the webinar package, because all webinar packages are not created equal there, but the chat is far superior in the webinar package, if only for the reason that we can identify questions, items as questions, and then we can share those questions and we can get back and answer those questions before the webinar is over. Big deal. This is something that will change depending on the different webinar clients you have and different email clients you have, but you typically have the ability to have multiple hosts and multiple presenters within a webinar, which have access to the entire infrastructure of the webinar. In live streaming applications, only the host of the live stream typically has control over the entire environment, and everybody else is just basically a presenter that they can't interact with the audience. They can just kind of be a speaking head on camera. And as I mentioned, the fact that it is an intentional view. When people come to a webinar, they come with intent. Tremendous value that is imparted there. The biggest weaknesses for webinars, well, the biggest single weakness is the trust factor, is the fact that people have to opt in, they have to share their email address. So there's always a degree of trust that has to be imparted. Now, it's not a big deal for somebody like us who have been delivering a webinar like Webinar Wednesday now for 4 years. We've engendered a great deal of trust with you, our audience. But if you're just starting out and people don't know if you're going to be a heavy pitch webinar or if you can deliver value, or if it's a lost leader where you're just going to talk a little bit about the topic that they're interested in, but then you're going to sell them something. Until you've got the trust of your community, webinars ask for a fairly high opt-in level of the fact that you're going to share the email address. People just don't want to be bothered. So that's number one. Reliability can be an issue with some webinar packages. Now, typically speaking, it's not when you're on the desktop. When you're on the desktop using your basic browsers, the reliability is now pretty excellent. But when you start moving into different mobile platforms, onto iPads or tablets or smartphones, webinar packages can be a little bit flakier because for the most part, they deliver their webinar inside of a browser-based environment. And while browsers on desktops are excellent, browsers in mobile and other devices can be so reliability can be an issue. Webinar packages can also end up costing you a pretty penny, depending on how many seats you have, depending on how many people you want to have viewing a webinar. But a typical webinar package can cost anywhere from hundreds, from up to hundreds or even thousands of dollars a month. for higher end packages if you're going to be broadcasting to a very large audience. So they can get a little bit expensive. And the biggest thing that webinars can't overcome is viral growth. And this is the reason. Viral growth is the reason that I believe that live streaming is ultimately going to win the day. And we are going to benefit from migrating more of our services over into live streaming from webinars. Because if we do a good job in our webinar, if Webinar Wednesday is successful, lots of people engage, they watch it for the entire length, guess what's going to happen? YouTube and Facebook are going to start to recommend it because they know people are enjoying it and staying on it. And it's relevant content, which is what they want their community to find. So if we build trust with the platform will then expose us to more people who should be participating in our content. This is something we simply can't do with webinars because we don't have access to a platform with all of the different members that a Facebook or a YouTube or an Instagram or a LinkedIn have access to. So viral growth is the differentiating factor that we can't overcome with the webinar tool. Now let's move over and let's talk about live streaming, the biggest strengths to live streaming. I just talked about one, of course, which is organic growth, organic and viral growth. The fact that Facebook and Instagram and YouTube can recommend me to you if you've never heard of me because you happen to be interested in Evernote, because we did a webinar on Evernote a couple of weeks ago. There were people that discovered us for the very first time in that particular webinar not because of anything we did, not because of any marketing we did, but because because YouTube or because Facebook decided to share it with people who they thought would be interested. And so it gave us viral growth. That is the biggest strength to live streaming. One of the biggest strengths. I'm going to say the biggest a few times, I think. It's very low cost. For the cost of you can actually do almost everything for free other than your hardware and your internet connection. You can broadcast using free tools if you choose. We use some commercial tools that make it far easier for us and give us far more flexibility and ease of use and reliability and give us some nice additional broadcast features. For example, we use Restream for this, and I'll show you a little bits of that in a few moments. But even so, Restream is a fraction of the cost of a comparable webinar package to deliver to this content to anywhere near the same number of people. We've already had live streams with in the neighborhood of 1,000 people live on the live stream. If we had to have a license to a webinar package for that much, it would be quite expensive. Part of the viral growth is the fact that after you've recorded a live stream, and if you leave that live stream within your YouTube channel or within your Facebook feed, specifically within your YouTube channel, you are going to start to rank in search. And if your content is good, again, YouTube will share it. So you will have evergreen growth coming as a result of it. And the same thing within Facebook, although the growth within Facebook is a little bit less because people just don't look for recommended videos the same way. Live streaming packages give us good analytics. It's not as personalized as the analytics we're going to get within a webinar package. But where the strength that we have with the analytics and live streaming is we understand where the general stickiness of our webinar. How many people come in, how many people stay, when they leave, and we can see exactly if we have a drop off in attendance, when it happens in our content, so that we can then modify our content to have higher retention rate. So we've got reasonably good analytics built into live streaming software as well. The biggest weaknesses is, as I mentioned, the platform holds a relationship. That's something that we can't get over. It's constantly a fear that gnaws away at us. And you're trapped in that platform. You can't take your audience and move them to another platform if you choose. We used to do all of our webinars in Webinar Jam, and then we changed to Demio. And guess what? Everybody came with us. And when we switched to YouTube Live and Facebook Live from our webinar package from Demio, we probably lost a few people because some people just don't like to use the live streaming tool. But I think overall we're seeing higher numbers, higher viewership in each and every webinar. We'd kind of stagnated as far as the growth of our webinars went, but now we see a steady increase in the number of people. So that's happening. Another weakness is dealing with chat in many locations. The unified chat, that's one of the tools that I'm going to be looking for somebody really smart to come up with a great unified chat tool that really validates all of the platforms and gives us the ability to have really good cohesive chat in the different platform. Now, there is one benefit to a platform like YouTube Live, where if you turn on monetization, you can have super chat, so people can pay you to have their question answered, which is a nice little bonus for content creators. But overall, chat's not as good. It's not as robust in the live streaming world, and a weakness in multi-hosting and setting up the ability to have multiple hosts running at the same time. So, having looked at those strengths and those weaknesses, what do we need to do in live streaming to get it to the level that it works as a webinar package, at least in a lot of instances? So what we've done in putting together how we manage Webinar Wednesday, I think now it represents kind of the minimum viable product for making a hybrid live stream and webinar package. So what we needed to be able to do was, we needed to be able to set up a schedule so that people could register for our live stream and not just subscribe. Because if you think about what happens typically in a live streaming scenario, when in Facebook or in YouTube, is you'll get notified in your feed that Steve Dotto is going live on Thursday, and you can follow it. And if you follow it, it will then appear in your feed. It's like subscribing to a YouTube video, and then you will be notified in your feed if you happen to be online, but it's only based on the YouTube feed or the Facebook feed. You don't have an email coming from the outside as well. So that is an issue. The second thing that we needed to have is some sort of a registration process so that we could actually overcome that and send those email reminders, be able to let people know from two perspectives. One, we want to make sure that you come to the webinar, so we want to give you a reminder by email. The second thing that we want to be able to do is we want to be able to follow up with you, send you emails and follow up afterwards to engage with you. And eventually, if we have a product that we're going to sell downstream, we want to be able to have identified that you are in that bucket and that you are a potential prospect for whatever revenue property we're offering somewhere down the line. And the final thing for building a system is actually delivering the webinar cohesively, having incorporated video and incorporating chat as well. So let's take a look at how we've kind of MacGyvered our own system, and I'll walk you through the pieces of that. So this is Demio. This is a traditional webinar package, and you can see that all of those different steps along the way of setting it up, setting up the email autoresponder, setting up the integration with CRM. It works terrifically well in this platform. The platform that we use for live streaming is a tool called Restream. Now, Restream gives us a nice studio app that allows us to do live streaming to multiple properties all at the same time. One of the biggest strengths that Restream has is we can go to YouTube, we can go to Facebook, we can go to different pages or different accounts, we can go to Instagram, you can go to Twitch, you can set it up to have multiple destinations. And you can see that I have a few destinations loaded in here. Now this, if we go into the events within Restream, this event here is actually, I've set everything up. This is actually the event that we're in right now. So this is our setup for the event which you are participating in at this moment. And right now I am inside of here, which is called the studio, and we are broadcasting from within this studio. So this video is actually streaming through in here. There you can add a video feed here by clicking here. You can incorporate and open a video to stream a video through to incorporate it. Any graphics that we've been sharing are all stored within here. So this is what's called a switching app, basically. It allows us to take different sources and present those sources to our community through the broadcast. Now, the live streaming tool itself is pretty straightforward and isn't really the challenge. This part of it, doing the broadcast, is something that live streaming tools have done exceptionally well from the beginning. Heck, you can do a great job live streaming just as far as the video goes, just with your phone. What's missing from this is all of that back-end integration that we talked about. So that's what I want to show you now, is how we set up our registration system, how we set up our email follow-up sequence, and how we let you know all of those kind of those administrative functions that are missing from the live streaming platform. Okay, now for the first time ever, I am going to walk you through the process that we have developed to deliver, to backfill all of the different pieces for webinar. And I'm going to tell you right away, this isn't super elegant. You kind of got to cobble together different pieces to make it work. And over time, I'm hoping we can streamline this process. But here is how we now set up a live stream that has most of the benefits of a traditional webinar. So it all starts within Restream for us, because that is our live streaming package. Well, I create a new event. When I go to create a new event, I choose it as a live stream and I give it a title, write in the description, set the date, time, and upload a thumbnail image for it. We create the thumbnail image in Canva. So all of this is really the same as setting up a webinar package. Nothing very different at all at this point. What happens when we go through this process is in the very next phase, the next stage here, Restream will ask me which of my platforms I want to broadcast to. So this is the first time it's different than webinars. I will then tell it that I want to broadcast, in this particular case of this one, to Facebook Live, to the Dottotech page on Facebook, and to the Dottotech channel on YouTube. What will happen then is Restream then takes all of this information and it composes the event. It publishes the event to both Facebook and YouTube. And here it is on YouTube. It goes into the live streaming area, and this is the exact file here that it creates. This is the webinar that we are in right now that I created a few days ago for today. And we can take a look at the details, and it brings me in and it shows me all of the event details. I wrote this copy. We set up the timing. I uploaded the thumbnail image. So this now is a live stream which is ready to go. It's been scheduled for when we're on air right now. Now what happens at this point here is I go here and I then manually copy this URL, which is the URL, the share link that you clicked on in order to watch this live stream. We take that share link then, and we take it and we import it into Lead Pages. We use Lead Pages, which is a landing page creator. Now, what this is doing is this is setting up the registration form that we would have set up, typically speaking, within the webinar package. Now, most webinar packages will allow you to design your own landing page or to create a registration widget, which will pull all of the information from an embed code that you can put on your website or into a place like Lead Pages, and it'll allow you to copy that information then into the webinar package. We bypass that process. Instead, what we do is we set up a registration box here, which has all of the information that we need, which includes your email, your name, and your email address. And that reflects here. That then creates the registration, which appears here in Infusionsoft. They call it Keep now. This is called Keep, but this used to be called Infusionsoft, so we all call it Infusionsoft still. So here it is. So this is, as of the time that I recorded this video, which is the day before today, was yesterday, I recorded this video. We can see we have 875 people registered. 875 people have visited this page here, and they have then gone and they have registered here. Now, at this point here, what we do is we create an email here within Infusionsoft, which we sent to you immediately upon registration, which says, thanks for registering. Here's the link that you're going to appear, where we're going to broadcast the live stream tomorrow. And you would have received that in your email package. And as well, we set up a sequence of emails based on that, including the reminder email that you received just a little while before this. Now, using a tool like Infusionsoft rather than a webinar package, there are a few unintended consequences to setting up this kind of an email funnel, which is so time sensitive. See, the thing about webinars is you want the delivery of the email 15 minutes before to actually be sent 15 minutes before. But because of the nature of big email autoresponder services like Infusionsoft or any of the bigger ones, at times when there is a real heavy load of emails going out, your email might not go at its scheduled time. If we want it to go at, say, 12:30 today, as far as they're concerned, they're like the big airlines. They're happy if it goes at 1:30 today, in which case you would get the reminder after the webinar started. Whereas the webinar autoresponders internally, they are going to send it before the webinar because it's all timed and it's like it's a integrated unit. So that's one of the challenges that we haven't yet been able to overcome. On low volume days, it's not a big issue, but over the week of Black Friday and all of the Thanksgiving week, for example, last week, the emails weren't going out on time. So we had a little bit of a kerfuffle there ourselves, just things that we learn from MacGyvering your own system together. Now, this using Infusionsoft or any email autoresponder at this point here, we then set up the entire sequence of emails that we send out to follow up afterwards as well. Now, the negative to this is people can attend this webinar. They can attend Webinar Wednesday without ever registering because it's open and live. Whereas within a webinar package, you wouldn't have that option. But that's a small price to pay, I believe, for the extra viral sharing. So what the webinar provider has to do, what we have to do then, is we have to give you a compelling reason to share your email address with us. We need that exchange. So what we do and how we've overcome the leakage that would happen as a result of people being able to just jump on through the social platforms is, you've heard us mention in all of the webinars, if you want all of the if you want the supporting content, the links that we mentioned, any extra information that we're sharing within this webinar, if you want to receive the follow-up email which has all of the links, make sure that you've registered for the webinar, and then we share the registration link with you again. So we've put together these pieces of the puzzle in order to backfill. Is it as good as a webinar package for managing this relationship? No, it's not as good. So that's where the balancing act is going to come in. The actual live stream delivery of the product on broadcast is as good or better through live streaming than through a webinar package. The chat sharing is not as good as it is within the webinar package, but the integration of our autoresponder, capturing your information, is not as good, but those two are serviceable. Chat and email autoresponder are serviceable and hopefully improving as we figure out better techniques. The biggest benefit still to doing live streaming is going to be the viral growth. If you are in a place where you're looking at growing your community, then I think that live streaming and doing a hybrid webinar live stream of the sort that we're doing is going to serve you exceptionally well. If you're just delivering online courses or you have a closed community where you don't need any of the viral sharing, webinar packages are still going to give you a little bit more control, but they are also going to cost a little bit more. And that is the pre-record. That was fun.
Oh.
So people like they liked having the note there, the Evernote note that I created. That
they
was good.
Did. Candace gets the prize for noticing.
Yeah. I thought it would. So I think what we might do though is let's just take that note and let's incorporate it in the follow-up email so that people can get access to it, and then we'll just add any links and into that exact note. So we'll use the Evernote note as a share. We'll send that to you if you've registered for the webinar, and if not, April will drop the link right now. We will send that to you with any links that we talk about here over the next few minutes. We didn't talk about too many things that required links. There's a lot of questions about Restream Studio and how it all works. The one overriding question which was asked, which is kind of the big fat no, is Instagram isn't the same player in live streaming as everybody else. Instagram is decided that they will not open up their API, so you can only stream to Instagram through the Instagram app on your phone. That's limited. And I think it's going to be limiting for Instagram. Although, Instagram people are happy with the live streaming that are using it. So there is that. Before we get into all the Q&A, though, I have to do one more big shout out to both our sponsor, who is Restream Studio for this particular. They've jumped on board and they are sponsoring Dottotech. They believe that there's value in what we deliver, and not only are they our partner as far as delivering this content to you, but they're also our sponsor. So we appreciate their support. You got a good idea of what's happening with Restream a little bit from this video. We're actually going to be releasing fairly soon a full-featured YouTube video on how we use it. So that will be coming in the not too distant future. So if you are considering doing live streaming and you don't yet have a platform that you're using, consider Restream Studio. It's certainly doing the job very well for us. And our other big thank is to all of our patrons, those of you who support us financially and keep us on the air and have been the wind in our sails now for some 4 years here for Webinar Wednesday. We appreciate your support, and Remember that this video will be available for 48 or for a week. We leave them up for a week now after we're done, and then it's being archived along with all the others for the express use of our patrons. And yes, we were talking about live streaming, and we are not changing the name of Webinar Wednesday to Wednesday live streaming because I need my alliteration, as was pointed out in the chat. I cannot do without my alliteration. So we got lots of questions. Did you get the questions out of Facebook as well? Because there's a few.
I did, but I actually answered them. So, but I can bring them over.
There was one that was late that I saw. Okay, well, let's jump in and let's see if we can get through the questions. We got about 15 minutes. We'll try and get you out of here as soon as we can.
All right. So the Clear Institute, if I use vMix, does Restream replace vMix or works with it?
No. So what with vMix on PC, and a lot of us like to use Ecamm Live on the Mac, it doesn't replace what Restream does. Restream can still work with those applications. What Restream will do is you won't use the Restream Studio. The Restream Studio is the switching app where we bring in different assets, where April and our feed is brought together and then shipped out to you, where the video that you saw playing is sent to you, and where all of the graphics that we might incorporate is all combined and being sent out to the program feed, which is the delivery that we send to you. So the studio does that. Restream Studio will do that all for us. We could also do that in a dedicated application, in a tool like OBS Studio, which is a free package on both Mac and Windows. You can do it in vMix, which is a package on Windows, or you can do it in Ecamm Studio, which is the package we like to use on the Mac. Those bring all of your assets together, and then they create a feed. Restream then steps in between that feed where it comes out of that package and the internet, and it then splits that and multicasts that stream to your different platforms. So that using Restream Studio, you can then go to both Facebook and YouTube at the same time as we are doing. So so there's kind of two ways that you can approach it. The simple, easiest way is just using Restream Studio because it's such an elegant and simple package. But if you want to have a more advanced needs, if you're incorporating a lot more elements and you want to be able to have kind of scene type switching where you have picture-in-picture happening and you have all sorts of elaborate arrangements on screen, then using a tool like vMix, or in our case, like using Ecamm, would be the way to go. So the answer is sort of.
So I guess that kind of leads into part of this other question. Is Restream better than OBS Studio? Because they're kind of all...
No, so OBS Studio wouldn't really compete with Restream. Restream would be a service that OBS would use, again, to split the stream. Although Restream Studio does the basic functions that OBS would do. For instance, OBS and vMix and Ecamm, we could all use this tool here with them, which is a switching app. So if you can imagine, if we were doing much more of a broadcast type TV show, like something really advanced, let's say rather than having pre-recorded my video, I had slides. I had times that I wanted to be picture-in-picture. I had sometimes I wanted to be full screen with just April. I had other times I just wanted to be full screen with me. I wanted to have certain graphics appearing all the time underneath. If I had just a small number of those sorts of things to do, I can do it all within Restream Studio. But if I had a lot of that to do, I would pre-program all of those as scenes within this little box here, which is called a Stream Deck. It's called the Elgato Stream Deck, and I would actually switch sources and go back and forth, and then switch and give a different feed out using that sort of a tool. It's far more advanced. You can do that with OBS as well. It's far more advanced. It's far more like a television show, as opposed to, this is very much like a webinar or a simple live stream where we've got very limited variation in presentation. Really, all we do is we have a graphic at the beginning, we have the video we insert, we have our feed, and then we overlay some questions occasionally. So we have very simple needs. Most of you have very simple needs. Restream Studio is going to suffice. There's a bit steep learning curve to OBS, and there's less of a steep learning curve to Ecamm, and I think vMix is kind of down the middle, but they are for more advanced video type presentation.
So I just have to give a shout out to Nancy. She's been great in the chat today.
Oh, geez, yeah.
But listen, this is great. Great analogy. Restream is like a bunch of Amazon delivery vans taking important content to different houses. Love it.
Very good. Yeah, I haven't seen Nancy around for a while. She's been busy, but it's good to see her back in the mix.
All right. Chris is asking, have you considered YouTube's new paid channel subscriptions?
No, we've got plenty of financial models for people to support us. And so YouTube it will allow you to create very similar to a subscription service, much like we would do with Patreon, where you would have to pay to get access to the content. If it had been back at the beginning of our relationship with Patreon when we were setting it up, we might have considered it at that point, but I'm not considering it at this point. The only possible thing that I'm thinking about adding is I just have to flip a switch if I want to turn on super chat within these live streams, which will allow you to tip us or have your question promoted to the top of the hill, so that by giving us, $2 or $5 or $5,000 if you're incredibly generous. I haven't put the switch on that yet, but I'm seriously thinking about it. What do you think, April? Should I do it? I think we will at some point.
I think you will at some 2021 plan.
Yeah.
All right. So Eugene was asking, what about webinars you might change? Oh, hold on. My screen is I have lots of screens open.
I see here. Sorry. What about webinars you might change for vStreams that you can't change?
Charge. So he's talking about charging. What about webinars you might charge for versus live streams that you can't charge for?
Yeah. So that is a good point. That's something that I probably should have brought up. It kind of slips below my horizon because it's something that I've never done. But within all of the webinar packages, you can set up it to be a paid event. So you can charge people to attend the webinar, which is actually a terrific idea if that's the space. So you could also, it'd be difficult to set it up in a live stream format. There'd be a lot more variables. And I'm just trying to think, can you live stream and have it as a private? I'm not even sure you can. But yes, if you're going to charge, the webinar packages will do everything for you. They will collect the money. They will take the payments. They will submit the invoice. They will send the registration information so that people can attend your webinar. If you are doing a charged for event, the webinar packages are really going to be the bomb. They're going to work great.
Oh, so Jana was telling everybody you have super chat, and there it is. I did
have it turned on. I was thinking about turning it on, and I didn't realize that I'd flipped the switch. Okay. Well, thank you. Jana, you're our very first super chatter. What am I going to do with all the money?
I think you got to take a big screenshot of that. That's a monumental event. Thanks, Jana.
And it appears here in the Restream feed as well, so I can identify. So the key behind this super chat, for a lot of you that haven't seen it before, and it's something that we haven't used here, but when people do large feeds and there's a lot of questions, sometimes the questions, like when we had 800 people on, the questions are flying by, and identifying which questions we should answer is a challenge. But people can move their questions to the top of the heap by putting in a super chat, and then it's identified to the host that these people paid. And sometimes it's just a tip saying we appreciate what you do, and people give money as a tip. But other times it promotes their question to the top of the heap.
Look at Richard. Thank you.
I'm kind of embarrassed now. I wasn't actually setting up to ask for money, but it's not that I'm going to say no to it. Trust me. There we go. Candace, thank you so much. That is awesome.
Wow.
That is great. Now,
it's a little awkward. It's a little awkward, actually.
It's okay. We'll get used to it. It's something that we could stand getting used to.
I'm sure anyone could. Exactly. Let's see. Richard was saying, what are we looking at for a cost to start up using a service like Restream? I know they have a free version, and that kind of ties into, somebody was asking what limits you on the free version.
Yeah, you're limited in the free version, the number of streams that you can have. And I believe you are also limited. I should check it. I'm not up. I haven't done my prep for the video for it yet. I'm not positive all of the limitations, but you can start using it for free to kind of get your feet wet and to figure things out. And it'll give you a really good feel for it. It's not super expensive. I
can pull it up.
Sure, there we go. Restream pricing. There we go. So the free forever plan gives you streaming to all of your different platforms, but just one at a time, I believe. For $16 a month, you get everything. Plus, you can stream to one Facebook and stream to Facebook page, public pages and groups. Oh, you can can't stream to Facebook public pages and groups with the free one. You can only go to probably just to YouTube, and you can also use it for coming out of the tools like Zoom, OBS, or Ecamm.
Yeah, and I think the free limits how many
level.
Yeah,
$41 a month, which is, or they give you a discount at $500 per year. You can stream to 3 destinations. And you can also, with the standard version, $16 a month, and the professional version, you can stream videos that you pre-recorded. And there was a question about that in our feed. And the question was whether or not they were surprised that we could stream video. And that is something which I'm constantly paying attention to, because I love to pre-record a video and then insert that video the way that we did today. And we were able to do it in webinar packages. There was a comment from Doug Piper. He said, yesterday we had a private event for people who are part of our Gray Wave community where we used Demio as a webinar package, and we delivered a course, we delivered a lesson. And that lesson had a 45-minute video, 50-minute video, and a huge video, training video. And it was really good quality. And now Demio, what happens now with Demio is Demio ingests the video. You upload the video to Demio, and then they stream it, which gives us much higher quality. When we're doing things from live streaming platforms, we actually ask our computer and our bandwidth to do extra work for us. It's an area that, technically speaking, live streaming, I think, is inferior to webinars at this point, but quite serviceable. So that's why I didn't bring it up in the webinar today. What has to happen is you pre-record the video, and then you store the video on your local computer. And then that video then gets uploaded. When you start to play it, it's actually playing from your desktop and streaming up to the internet. So it's got to be uploaded from your computer, and then distributed to all of you, and then downloaded. So if it adds an extra variable in the fact that it's the upstream link from the host's computer, and the power of the host computer is so important. Now I've got not the brand new, I've got a newish Mac Mini, which is quite powerful with 32 gig of RAM in it for the video. When I export the video, when we export for YouTube, we export it as HD. It's 1020 or 1920 by 1080. What I do with the videos that you just saw is I downsample that video. I use a tool called Handbrake on the Mac, and I take the video that I've output, which is at 1080, 1920 by 1080, and I reduce it to 720p. I reduce the file size, and it took the video that you just saw from 1.4 gigabytes, which was its original output size, to about 300 megabytes. And that's the one that I stream through. So the quality isn't quite as good as it would be in HD, but it asks for a lot less bandwidth in the upload. Plus, I've just upgraded to 1 gigabit fiber, so I could probably make do with the higher quality video. But that's the variable that you face when you start incorporating a live stream. Well, somebody just give us $20.
Yes, Johnny Google.
Johnny Google. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Johnny Google.
Yeah.
Happy days from the Google guy, indeed. Well, thank you so much.
One of the other things I want to add, it's not necessarily video quality, but like all these third-party streaming tools, the difference between like Demio is there's only one way that we can manage the chat. So whoever logs in has to manage all of the chat. So if Steve's running the live stream on the tool, he has the chat going, but I am logged into our Restream. I'm logged into our YouTube Live and our Facebook Live, so I can chat with everybody. So you kind of have to work around the other nuances, the third party with Facebook groups. It doesn't allow you to automatically see the user. You actually have the user who's in the Facebook group watching the live stream has to give approval to be able to see them. So there's definitely some differences.
Some subtleties that we face along the way. Now, all of those things are going to be improving. Like right now, they're serviceable, but they are going to improve over time. So by that, for example, I've in conversation, as Restream is now our partner, I'm in conversation with them. They are planning on making the Restream Studio multi-user as an administrator the way that webinar packages are. So that means that April,
wonderful.
from within the dashboard here, will be able to see everybody's chat and respond right from within here in a unified chat interface, seeing all of the chat coming. Because I see from Facebook and I see from YouTube all in the chat. She sees it there, but she can't reply. Thank you very much, Claire.
The other thing too is bandwidth. For me, I have live streams going on 3 different platforms. So
there we go. So the Clear Institute super chatted us. Brought so much to me. Thank you very much. Really happy to be part of the Gray Wave. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Fun, big time. Thank you so much, buddy. That's awesome.
All right. So would you say it depends on how many people are subscribed to our channel? Would you recommend webinar up to a certain point and then switch to a live stream?
That's not a bad idea. It's, how you grow. We didn't really talk about growth strategies. We talked about the benefit of live streaming packages as far as giving us viral growth. But when you're starting out, if you're not going to have anybody watch your live stream, then I question whether or not you should be doing a live stream, because a live stream traditionally isn't going to land as well and get shared as much on YouTube as a dedicated upload, as a traditional uploaded video. So if you have content to share that you think that nobody's going to watch live because you don't have an audience yet, I would really encourage you to either do it as a webinar where you invite people to come, which would be one option, or to take that content, reimagine it in your mind, and instead publish it as a video that will then have a chance to gain traction and, you use a traditional YouTube publishing model for that video. So that might be something that you might consider.
All right. Dan was asking, I'm a user of Evernote Web on Windows and Chrome. I'm stuck on previous version after switching from old to new. Evernote chat not supported, and site says email response is 10 days. Do you have any recommendations?
No.
It's a bummer.
Strange. Yeah, no, I my head's not in Evernote right now. I haven't been thinking about it, so yeah, I'm not too sure. No, I don't have any recommendations for you now. Sorry. I'll think about it though.
Can you bring a guest in on the fly and restream like you can on StreamYard?
Easy peasy. Just all you do is there's a invite link here right within the interface. You send that to the person, and then they just enter the studio. And I have control. Like I can send April back to the green room. I can bring her back on. I can make her smaller and me bigger, or bigger and me smaller, or this might be better here, me bigger and her smaller. So I have control over who's in and who's out. So you can have guests waiting in the green room and then bring them on later. And if there's multiple people in right now, it will automatically reformat the screen to look more like a Zoom screen where you've got multiple people on screen at the same time. So you've got some nice options there.
All right. So can you pick 2 pages groups on Facebook and YouTube Live for an event?
Yep. If you have the right package. If you have one of the higher end packages, you can stream to multiple packages. I've got the professional version, so I'm not limited, I think, in any way.
I know. We should actually try streaming to LinkedIn. You haven't thought about that.
Yeah. I'm just such not a LinkedIn guy.
I know, but you're on there.
I am on there.
All right. Let's see.
You said it's kind of StreamYard. Yeah, it is. StreamYard is Restream's main competition, to be certain. It is Restream's main competition. Restream has more professional users because of the higher end, because of the fact you can use it and you can direct all of your feeds from tools like OBS, and it handles those multiple streams. And so a lot of people think of it kind of at the high end, and they haven't yet discovered the Restream Studio. I think StreamYard had their studio in advance of Restream. So for ease of use of live streaming, StreamYard was out a little bit earlier. But we've used StreamYard. We still do occasionally for different projects. But Restream does not come in second in any way, as far as I'm concerned.
Ray's asking, is there any value in doing a live streaming to Facebook and YouTube to share some content if you are pretty sure nobody will watch it live? Is it an option for creating videos for a YouTube channel?
Yeah, I just kind of talked about that. And it would be a way you could create a video, but I would prefer if you record the video as a dedicated video. Replays don't perform as well. When I look at, if I did a bit like our video on Evernote a couple of weeks ago was a really popular live stream, and it's had 6,000 or 7,000 views as a restream, as a replay here. If I had uploaded that same title as a dedicated video on YouTube, it would have at least 5 times the views.
All right. Let's see.
I think we're at the top of the hour, so we should kind of.
Oh yeah, sorry, that went by.
Well, Lynn is bringing me up short though. She said, "Oh my God, I love LinkedIn. I teach 15 hours of LinkedIn content, but not on L."
All right.
We should teach content, but not on LinkedIn.
Exactly. Let's see. All right, I'm going to drop, friends. If you didn't sign up for today and you want the replay, clearly this link is going to be available. But if you want any of the links that we're going to drop, including Steve's Evernote checklist, I'm dropping in that you can sign up here. All right.
Good stuff. Well, listen, folks, I hope you found today valuable. I normally let you know now what we're going to do next week on the show, but I got confused. In 2 weeks, we've got App Wednesday, and we've got a killer lineup. We're going to be looking at productivity apps for 2021. And I've got special guests, the biggest productivity experts on the planet, coming in to play App Wednesday and to be humiliated a little bit by Steve as they share their favorite productivity apps looking ahead to 2021. I thought, I don't know why, that it was next week. So I looked at it. It's the 16th that we're doing that. Next week, I'm not sure what we're doing yet. We will figure it out, but keep your eye on your email.
Going to be like, uh-oh.
And we will let you know. Everybody who super chatted me, thank you so much. That is awesome. To all of our patrons, thank you. And to all of you who participated and made this just a great conversation where we all learned, including myself, I thank you one and all. April, time to start finishing off those decorations.
Yes.
Till next week, folks. Have fun storming the castle.
Bye, guys. Thank you so much.